sign-in sheet, so I know who's in the room to sign, the people that already know. I want this to be a working meeting and to be able to answer a number of questions. Let me thank Liza for helping to organize this. We appreciate it. Paul, who is our district engineer, and Quincy Allen, who has worked with us before. We thank you so very much. Want to acknowledge Ms. Lewis as well, who we worked with, and Mr. Singh, thank you so very much. And James Cook. Are you like the cook or the cow?
Conch, like it has a T.
Which one are you?
The conch, like it has a T.
Okay, you're with the couch. Okay, you're not with the cook. You know, there's the Cook brothers that spell it K-O-C-H.
Yes, sir. No.
Okay.
Not related.
All right. So you keep pronouncing that for me because they've got me turned over to Cook when I know it's K-O-C-H. So forgive me if I just say James. Okay. And James, what do you do?
I'm the Transportation Planning and Development Director for Eliza. So I'm basically the production guy to get, once the projects are funded and all that, we get the funding, get the design done, work with right-of-way, work with utilities to get them to construction.
And so you're implementation side of the deal.
And prior to this job, I was the Transportation Planning and Programming Director for the entire state in Austin.
Great, thank you. Mr. Singh, what do you do?
I'm a licensed deputy overseeing all the, helping her oversee all the operations in the district, planning, design, construction.
Great, thank you so very much. Ms. Paul, we know that you're a district engineer. Lewis, we know that you're in communications. Good to see you again. I didn't know it was broad. I didn't want to be presumptuous. Thank you. Mr. Allen, we know what you were, so what are you now?
On the state level, I'm the director of district operations. I'm in charge of all the districts, not only Houston. Dallas and Moses.
And the work that goes on there.
Yes, sir.
So let me say a bit of good news and really I'm delighted to introduce my district director, Ms. Yoruba Harris, who has a vast amount of experience. Our senior counsel and senior advisor, Mr. Garrett, who knows that I'm going to botch his last name, so he knows that I'm going to stop. So you can say it, Frenchman. Arzine. Truly a Frenchman. Thank you so very much, Garrett Arzine, and further staff, Alex. So thank you all so very much for being here. We can start with a bit of good news of the Senate vote on the $1 trillion infrastructure bill. It is well known and well documented that Texas is going to get a large share of that federal dollars, relatively decent amount of dollars, just simply because our sign, and because in this instance, though I don't have a count on what my two senators did, I will find out for sure. But I know that the delegation will be fighting hard to ensure that the resources come to the state. And we have done that over the years, and my very first transportation bill was called T-21. That was more than 27 years ago. And I brought in a sizable amount of transportation dollars into this region. I've always been steadfast, even without being on the transportation committee, and have a good relationship with the chairman of the committee. So I look forward to keeping our promise on some transportation projects that many members have included in their own, what we call community projects, but then also the general appropriation process. So you've got the bill with $1 trillion, and then you've got the transportation appropriations that's already moving. Hasn't gone to the Senate yet, but that's another whole component of dollars that will include transportation dollars. So that is the good news. And I think the point is extremely important because I consider the responsibility of being a huge stakeholder huge and a very deep responsibility. So on December 5th, 2020, I wrote the chairman and I expressed in a pretty long letter of approximately 18 pages, my concern about I-45 project, which we call the NHIP, I assume, I-45 North Houston Highway Improvement Project. Since that time, I've been joined in opposition by the city of Houston, the mayor, the county judge, and members of the commissioner's court, some state legislators, community groups, who obviously might have been there beforehand. And it is going up and down. I said in the very church that you now will destroy, the one on I-45, I think in Yale or the Main, whichever corner it is, that will be torn down. It's a church that was built, I think, by the pastor, and that'll be gone. I have seen the confronting of senior citizens who have had their doors knocked on and their homes bought from right underneath, a process that I find appalling. So that if anybody had a fight in them, they're going down the tube on the fight. They just can't fight anymore, or they cede to the dollar bill, tragically. And that is what I've been seeing happening throughout the community. In particular, the fight for seniors who are completely confused and signing off with various real estate persons that is coming out of your agency, intimidating and getting them to sign away their property. You are frankly destroying Independence Heights. They try to put up a fight. I don't know what that fight is at this point in time. But I'm very unhappy about that. The Leonel Castillo Community Center in Grassy area, I understand that is going to be sufficiently destroyed and taken away by this project as well. So issues that we're concerned with that were repeated in my letter were air quality in adjacent schools, building to a 500-year flood standard and not 100-year, displacement and noise and air quality in low-income communities of color, unsafe designs and highway-urban interfaces further divide the community. Those are just some of the issues that have serious impact on adjacent low-income residents and communities of color, but also the elderly. It's just shameful that they in their senior years have to lose the property that was theirs. I had such a difficult time. Just want to read another excerpt of my letter. In the mid-1960s, TxDOT's conclusion of construction of the original I-45 project left in its wake a highway cutting through the historic communities of 3rd Ward and 4th Ward, north side of Independence Heights, with disproportionate negative impact on low-income communities and communities of color. There you go again. The FEIS makes it clear that the proposed project will continue this pattern by significantly widening the highway through the near north side and Independence Heights, resulting in the displacement of more than 1,000 residential housing units, and most 400 businesses to clear the way for more lanes. We just got a devastating United Nations report on climate, and that humans are the major actors in climate destruction, and humans in cars are serving that. The department's name is the Texas Department of Transportation, not highways. I believe the department should look creatively at how you deal with this mixture of a new urban and rural needs, and that historic facilities, homes, should be relevant in considering the planning. Now, TxDOT will say that they started planning this 15, 20 years ago. That is a problem. 15, 20 years ago, most of the community was asleep. We were planning busily, limited interaction, probably didn't even drive around in the community. Didn't know the historic elements. I have just gotten law that has been signed into law, led by myself and Senator Cornyn, a Republican, that establishes an Emancipation Trail coming in from Galveston along I-45 South and into downtown. The proposed expansion of I-45 of downtown to the Beltway will result in impacts to the neighborhoods along the route of this historic Emancipation Trail of federal law. Did anybody bother to come to me and, what does that mean, Congressman? how can we be compatible? So, I understand what planning is all about. But when you plan something 15 years ago in the dark of night, nobody knows what's going on, then the communities grow and we expand and we have outstanding opportunities and we just completely ignore it. Just completely ignore it. So, efforts by your office to address community concerns must include detailed mitigation strategies reflected in the FEIS, such as minimizing displacement, and this is in a letter that you can draw up, but I just want to read it for the record. Minimizing displacement of single-family, multifamily, and public housing homes and businesses. As I said, as I understand, over 1,000 units are currently slated. There may be more, and I'd like someone to have an accurate number. Protecting historical and cultural sites identified by advocacy groups, historians, the city of Houston, or community residents. Improving neighborhood level air quality impact. Protecting green space and parks within each impacted neighborhood. Erecting two-direction transit lanes. Installing BRT stations along the route of I-45. Bringing I-45 north up to current safety design standards. Designing two-lane frontage roads as city streets. Improving drainage on Little White Oak and Paul's Bayous. Substantially mitigating flooding in Independence Heights. Saves costs to taxpayers, and improving bicycle and pedestrian safety, especially around the crossings and under I-45. And I might say, I was outside of the very attractive bridge that we did on South Shore, and I applaud working with Representative Coleman and the leadership that was given by his office. Certainly the community, I think, will benefit by that attractiveness. But then I just took a ride down 288, and huge monstrosity that you have that doesn't relate to my inner city neighborhoods. I'm not selfish. But as I drove out this huge monstrosity past, where I was going past, as you just continue down Alameda on the Theater Road, whether or not you are just beginning, there was no landscaping. There was trash of all kinds of white papers all over the area, no grass, some little skinny trees. It looks like you just said, the heck with it. This is just the plain heck with it. Now somebody could say, well, we're just still working. The monstrosity is there. The spaghetti bowl is there. People are riding on it. Why didn't you take the time to landscape? The other problem I have that you have gone on complete deaf ears is the lack of MW participation. There's one contractor that most of us know that's been doing textile work for about 90 years, maybe even 100. Probably they were paving roads when they were riding horses. You know the name. I'm frankly not going to say it. I will say it on the floor of the House. Just the same groups over and over and over again. For me, that is, in this environment, where the record of MWPs on the spec and tech side is probably at zero, that would be one of my major questions. I want to see the record of tech stock as relates to your contract and minority contractors, percentage thereof, which will include a breakdown. I know that the terminology in Texas is hub, and so I'm not asking you to create a miracle, but the hubs are different racial backgrounds, just historically underused businesses. Whatever category you utilize, which would I guess include women and small businesses, I'd like to see that breakdown. Let me just read this bit, but I think it's going to be redundant, so I'm already stating that, because this is on page 5. And this is, there are several areas of concern regarding FEIS that include. So this may be with a little bit of explanation. Let me just see if it's complete. Now, it's a little different. Insufficient collaborative engagement. Yes, I know that I've popped in on several efforts that you've had, but I don't know how we do this. I mean, I am empathetic with trying to reach people, and to have meetings where random people show up, and then another week that somebody else show up and everybody's saying different things. I am empathetic to that. I'm in the federal government, and I know what we do and what happens with projects. Our projects are a little different, but I do understand. But I do think we need to reconfigure how we do things. We should dig deep, get a basic core of community groups and work with those community groups. Local minority businesses, and those locations deemed to be of cultural and social significance to residents. So I think sometimes you need to have meetings with actual expert stakeholders who can inform you in the midst of the planning process. Needing to adequately address the issue of flooding and flood mitigation that will occur post-construction. The inflexibility in the methods for project development that makes it clear that TxDOT is incapable of serious consideration of external input from external sources, which include rejecting making any changes to the plans that incorporate ideas and well-researched solutions to addressing real-world transportation needs in the impacted area. That's a very difficult situation. Disregarding a focus on environmental justice for all who will be displaced by the project and not having an independent, reputable third party to report on the plan's impact on vulnerable communities. That would be a worthwhile contract to let before you even start. These are issues I hope that you will utilize constructively in another working meeting when someone is taking absolute notes. I'll go back to my December 7th, 2020 letter, and somebody needs to tell me whether I got a response, and if I did, you need to resend it, but probably it's inadequate. Absence of a plan, I think these were comments, so please, but I know that they were comments. But if I need to turn it into a letter, I will do so I can get a response. Absence of a plan to address the national parks' ongoing work to develop a report for a national emancipation historic trail. We were just beginning at that. My bill was signed in the winter, of 2021 or late 2020. I think it was signed in the winter of 2021. But the bill was well noted. We've had meetings and people were aware of it, done any little homework, or cared about talking to any of the historians. They would have known. No acknowledgement of the change of traffic patterns due to COVID-19 measures. Now that may still persist, but I think people are getting back to work. But at that time, people were not using the highway. Not adequately addressing the growing demand for multimodal forms of transportation. There is a great demand for mass and bimodal travel options for residents of urban areas. Not providing concrete solutions for the loss of public housing units due to construction of the speculative or the speculative buying of property in the planned area for construction that might result in impacts to the availability of affordable housing. Not addressing pedestrian and bicycle safety, I've already said that. And I said the issue of insufficient collaboration. Let me quickly provide just these 3 points. Okay, so I don't know if this is the latest document, but I'm going to read into the record what I have of the city's concerns and the quote from the mayor at that time, which said a survey is not public engagement. Further, this survey is framing a false choice. We do not intend to play their game. Their request, study segment 1 and 2, alternative to use only the right of way needed as determined by a recalculation of future demand based on most recent and relevant data. Study dedicated transit lanes with stations that serve adjacent communities. Design frontage roads, crossings, and other points of neighborhood interface with city streets. Keep communities whole by allowing residents and businesses to remain in their neighborhood and increase funding for housing construction to maintain the supply of affordable units. Going out 45 north, from downtown, which I think will be included in your project, going out north, you apparently are taking all the little baby businesses, not to say they're the most attractive, but it looks like there's no mercy, including a popular spot of charity and business, which is Mattress Map business. Looks like that could be, find another path forward to allow businesses to remain in their neighborhood. The county, of course, has found a lawsuit and has expressed their concerns, and I'll present that in just a moment. I'm looking at the more extensive work that's been done by the city of Houston, and maybe I'll get into it. But let me just get into segment 1 and 2, footprint. Rebuild the highway within the current footprint as much as possible, no added main lanes. Current reversal HOV lane is replaced with two-way dedicated transit lanes. I think that's very important. Design exception and lane width and shoulder width as required to keep the footprint within the current right of way. Reconstruction of interchanges and on and off ramps. On segment 2, the city requests to partner with Texas to study this and other alternate configurations. Obviously, this has been on the books, and we're now on this day, August the 10th, 2021, a confirmation of goals amongst Texas, Harris County Metro, and the city. The development of a new alternative described along with other alternatives Texas may identify. Traffic modeling for the new alternative, agreement on parameters for that city modeling, robust public input. And there's been a lot of newspaper articles which I will get into at a later point. But let me just conclude my opening remarks with this. There is no doubt that we're on the same page as public servants trying to help in the best way that we think. TxDOT over the years has had a heavy hand. He'll work with the local COGS, I think they're called, Council on Government. He worked in particular Houston Galveston Council, dominated by groups, small cities, of which I have a great deal of respect for, who are really either dumb down the urban areas or overcome them or have the votes. In one HGAC meeting, there were 400 people speaking. They were totally ignored. And the vote was to go forward with this project. I think you're all aware of it. I don't have the exact date. I think I called in on one of them. I can't do that often because I'm in Washington. But there's been a sense of privilege, my way or the highway, by TxDOT over the years. In particular, the new I-69, which was then 59, coming through Fifth Ward, you all recall, whoever's worked here that long, Quincy, maybe you did, didn't have an exit ramp in 59. I know I was one of the voices against it, so was Harold Dunn. I think we made a difference. But you were building that road without an exit ramp in Fifth Ward, and you caused schools to be closed, any number of them. I think Councilmember Carol Galloway, or city, or trustee, I can't remember what position she had at that time, was right in the middle. There's schools sitting dead right now, building, because of this I-59, now called I-69. You can't come into our community and be a destroyer. And then add insult to injury. You sent out a monkey survey, because I guess you're so broke, you can't hire a professional pollster to do a professional poll. And you put on there, take it or leave it. Do you want to keep it in our 10-year plan, or do you want to take it out? It doesn't say, do you want to keep it with modifications? Do you want to continue to discuss it? This is not a life or death issue that we got here. Texas Department of Transportation has complete authority to reserve their dollars. And if there's a problem with federal dollars being returned, they have a congressional team. Now, you do have, I'm sure, support in the other phases of that. And you will present that to me today as well. I'm going to want to hear what groups, and somebody needs to sit down in my office and take notes.
I'm taking notes.
Okay, well, maybe you don't need to sit down.
I'm taking the notes.
I'm going to want to hear the phases, what were the towns and what pieces, once I get inside the 45-610, what does the rest of the project look like and what communities is that project going to? So you may give me this briefing, which is gonna take how long, Ms. Paul?
We can try to go pretty fast, because.
I'm not particularly rushing you, it is 2:52, so just give me how long you think it will take.
The whole thing will probably take about 20 minutes.
Okay, well, we'll take 2 minutes. Okay. Okay, well, we'll take that, I'll raise my hand when I don't wanna deprive you of that. But, it is important that someone acknowledge that monkey survey was just insulting. It's just too insulting. I don't know where that came from, it's just an insult. It's a bully poll. It is, take it or leave it. Take it or leave it. Take it or leave it. So, in concluding, I want to continue to be the advocate for my state, my constituents, and beyond, as I have been. I don't take a backseat to anyone on battling for dollars and not saying, oh, that's TxDOT that destroys neighborhoods that I live in. 288 was another one. You literally destroyed a good part of Third Ward, a good part of the middle class community of teachers and others, that swath of land, swath coming through. And we could have come down Alameda, that was clearly for way out somewhere. Some people call that progress, but you did destroy a good part of our thriving community. And that's what TxDOT has done in urban areas over and over and over and over again. We want you to stop at I-45. So I'm gonna simply say that, and I don't want this to be a hollow comment. We got a lawsuit from Harris County. We've got discrimination lawsuits at the at the U.S. Department of Transportation. We got people trying to change the law for you not to be able to do your own EIS. Because, why would you criticize yourself? I think it was a horrible situation that TxDOT did to them, U.S. Department of Transportation. I personally think it's wrong. They need to do the work. We can help them set up good materials, they need to do the work. Because maybe it would have been done way back when, we could have had some intervening actions about all of this destruction that is going on. Too many of our communities have been have faced destruction, over the years. What comes to mind is Freedmanstown, horrible destruction, that's a housing destruction. So what I would like to see out of this is a redesign. I'd like not to be threatened. Everyone will not be happy. I'm not in any way trying to suggest that it will be pie in the sky. But there are some glaring issues. Now, you've already bought churches and buildings and, you are taking down the Pierce Elevated. I don't know what nightmare that's gonna be. I view it to be a literal nightmare. And as you do that, that means that you widen out this circumference. And that's where the Castillo Community Center is destroyed, and not everything else is destroyed, and communities are destroyed, and the near north side is destroyed, and Independence Heights, where people have literally given up. They've literally given up. And the final point, with all of the grace and discretion that I can say, I am a person that believes in the Constitution and the freedom of speech. I also believe in people working, people having businesses. But you know that you have retained individuals to dumb down real opposition. It's okay we're not asleep. We understand what is happening. I'm just not gonna let that be the call of the day. The idea of it is you have that privilege. I I have no criticism of it at all. But that is not gonna be the final word. They're not gonna be the final word. They can be participants, they can do as you have retained them to do, but they're not going to speak broadly for this community. And I will be meeting with all of the persons. You are the first that I'm meeting with on this go round. I thought it was important to meet with you without any sort of untoward intention or any sort of group activity, other just, you know, involvement, so that I could hear it clearly and simple. But this is what I've gathered over the time that I've not been able to meet with you and we've been in Washington. So let me end by thanking you very much for coming. You are public servants. You have taken the time. Ms. Paul was very diligent. She should be grateful that I didn't call her at 12 midnight on Sunday. I think I was contemplating, but I decided that would be too much. But she acted very swiftly, and I am very pleased that you did so. Thank you so very much. She knows that this was on the horizon, but she still acted very swiftly, and I am grateful to you. So at this time, Ms. Paul, I'm going to yield to you, and I'm going to look at the PowerPoint, and then we'll have some time for questions. I raised the framework of my questions in my remarks, so I hope you all gathered some of them. But the very basic questions are going to be, you know, where are we in this project? So status. What are the other components? Meaning, you know, what town out there is saying we will die if we don't do this? And what political entities likewise, and I say that jurisdictions are likewise doing that. And then the MWDs, and then I'll get closer into my areas and what an analysis of each area, what they're doing with that. As it relates to the Harris County lawsuit, you can tell me whether it's still active. I don't need to have any briefing on that, but you can tell me whether it's still active, and then you can tell me what and you're doing any work with the U.S. Department of Transportation on our discrimination charges. Discrimination based on historic factors, et cetera, et cetera. You're on. Thank you, sir. Thanks.
Before you do that, I just.
I can multitask.
Okay. Before we start the presentation and all that, I just want to talk about it, explain a little bit that this process, the project has started back in probably about 2003.
Go ahead.
Okay, the project started back in 2003, and like you say, TechStop has gone through a process, and during the early stages and all that, we have done a lot of public engagement and meeting to meet with the different locals. We have our public meeting and engage with HAC and also the public to come out with the framework of the project that we currently proposed. So the project was approved through HAC, I think 14 different times through the years, saying that this is the project that TechStop should progress, you know, and continue to progress. So that's why we've been working 2003, 2011, 2010, 13, all the way up to now, 2019 and 20. And that's when we are starting to hear something a little bit different, that the public and the neighborhood and the people are wanting something different on this project. You know, so we went through our entire environmental process to the point that we got to the ROT stage, which is our record of decision. Through a lot of public engagement, a lot of back and forth, questions and answers and all that, come to the point when we did the ROT. And that's when we tried to progress the project, and people was telling us they want a different project at that point in time. And so, what we are trying to listen to the public, and we have been trying to listen to the public and all that. And we agreed that we could make adjustments to the project, what we call refinements to the project. We were willing to make changes, and in fact, we have made several changes. And some of them we actually we'll go through in some of the slides and all that. We have to make changes in different areas throughout the project. But if the public wants a project that is totally different than the one that it took us 10 years to progress, you know, we worked our way come to this point. If the public decided that that's not the project, they want something completely and totally different, that they changes, the main thing is the purpose and need, then TxDOT will be forced to go back from scratch. We can't fix that, basically, with the refinements. We have to go back to square one and go through this process and start all over again. You know, and that's kind of where we're at. We would like to work with the communities, and we would like to work with the city and county and everybody to make the refinements on this project, to get to the project that everybody can live with. We can all live with a win-win situation. But we are not able, TxDOT are not going to be able to completely change the project 100%. If that's what everybody wants, then we will have to go back to scratch. And that's also why the commissioner, I'm not saying right or wrong, that they set up the survey in whole, because the project has money dedicated to it in the project. So there's a lot of money tied up in the project. So if the project is not ready to go, what the commissioner is tasked to execute. So what they are saying is, if we cannot execute this project is on hold, is paused by FHWA or by the lawsuit, by whatever means, then the commissioner may want to use that money somewhere else to be able to utilize it so that they can continue to execute. And that's why I think they come up with this survey goal, and it's really just a funding question. It's not a project question. We're not soliciting public comments for the project anymore. We've been doing that for the last 10 years, and we have collected a lot of public information and all that. So really, this is a question that, are we going to continue on the project, or are we going to take the pause? I think that is the question right there. So I just want to bring those facts to make sure you understand some of those dynamics of why TxDOT is doing what they're doing. It's not, we're not listening. We don't want to listen to the people and all that. With that, I'm going to let